Gee, Mr. Harrigan, I sure wish you were here. I had such a bad day at school. All I want is a cheese pizza.
The story is told of Lucy and her song came over to Canada 1901, was singing and dancing and looking for fun in Harrigan.
Hello, and welcome to Random Movie Time. Today's feature is the 2022 supernatural thriller, Mr. Harrigan's Phone, written and directed by John Lee Hancock, based on the Stephen King novella of the same name, and starring Jaeden Martell and Donald Sutherland. This tells the story of a young boy who befriends an aging business tycoon who takes him under his wing, and they both bond over their shared fascination with smartphones, of all things. But the story takes a supernatural turn when the boy comes to believe that his own smartphone may be communicating with the spirit world. Well, Shannon, what did you think of this movie?
First of all, I just want to say that we're very sorry that we missed last week. We've both been very sick and we're not 100%, but we're there. We're here now. So let's get into that. It was a good movie. Well, it was okay for me. It was a little slow pace for me. However, some of the good things about it were the performances, definitely. I mean, Donald Sutherland did a fantastic job as usual. The young boy who played his friend, they start off, the way it happens is Donald Sutherland, the business tycoon, requests that the young boy come and read to him. And it starts off that's how their friendship starts. And it starts when the main character is a young boy. And it goes through his teenage years up until high school. He's reading to Donald Sutherland's character. That is a bit of a slip of the tongue because Donald Sutherland's character is a conservative business tycoon, but definitely not a buffoon. One thing I really liked about this story, this movie, was how they built up the relationship between the boy and the billionaire. I think that gave the movie a lot of credence and a lot of weight, and you cared about the relationship and you cared about these two characters and their relationship. I find that all too often movies like this that are supposed to be suspenseful or I wouldn't call this horror, but it's kind of suspenseful, thrillerish, kind of, not even thrillerish, I don't know. It's a Stephen King story in the vein of like Stand By Me or something like that. So it's a little more slow pace. But these sort of movies tend to rush past the relationships. They don't really care about building that rapport. Well, this one was very, very good at it. You really cared about them. So those are two things that I felt very positively about. This is a very recent Stephen King story too. This was written in 2020. So I can understand why some people may not have heard of this Stephen King story. I appreciated the film. It really struck me as kind of like a mix between a Mike Flanagan and the Wonder Years film. It was kind of like a coming of age story for the boy. But one thing I didn't like about this film was I felt that it was a really thinly veiled social criticism. It wasn't very eloquently presented in this film to me. It's basically one of the main criticisms of the movie is people are too addicted to their cell phones and to technology. A big part of this too is a big part of this movie too is cell phones and students having cell phones in their high school, like being totally antisocial and just, communicating through cell phones instead of actually talking to each other. I never experienced that. I mean, cell phones in high school was before my time, so I feel fortunate in that way. But I thought that, it was kind of criticizing the whole technology taking over from people interacting with each other, like in person. And to me, I thought it might have been presented better if that was why this movie was made. But it was beautiful and it was really nicely shot. There were some really nice shots in there, and the acting was fantastic. It was just really slow burn, and the payoff was good, but to me, in my mind, the payoff was really good, but it wasn't worth the wait. That's how I felt, anyway. What about you, Tommy? What do you say?
Well, there have been a lot of good Stephen King adaptations. There have been some stinkers, too, on the screen. Some of them, they're really good movies, even if they're not exactly like the book. Like, I'm thinking of movies like The Shining. Mm-hmm. Then there are some that get pretty close to the feel of the books. I'm thinking of Dolores Claiborne and Secret Window. But this movie came closer than any movie I've ever seen to really capturing the feel of reading a Stephen King book. That being said, I do think it's the sort of story that really depends on knowing what the main character is thinking. So without all the narration you'd get on the printed page, it could feel like the story has some gaps in it. That being said, I've been reading Stephen King books for so long, I sort of feel like I have a shorthand for watching movies like this because, I immediately knew everything there was to know about this troubled young man from Maine. I've been reading about this character or characters like him, for decades. So I sort of feel like the movie sort of immediately worked the way the Stephen King stories are supposed to for me. Especially the dialogue. The dialogue was so Stephen King, especially the dialogue they gave Donald Sutherland. I just thought that is a quintessential Stephen King character if there ever was one. And it was really great to see Donald Sutherland with such a big, meaty role. I could be wrong, but I don't remember him having such a big role in recent years. He's always been active, but usually with smaller parts, I think. But this was, a very big, very important role for him, and it was really, really good. As for the story, it's a little bit of the old monkey's paw idea where, you think, is this object really worth all the trouble it's causing me, At one point, the boy gets good news, like really, really good news, and then at another point, he uses the phone to make some very evil wishes, which he immediately regrets, of course, as soon as he does them. It reminded me a little bit of another Stephen King story called The Sundog, which is about a boy who gets a haunted Polaroid camera. It's not exactly the same story at all, but it's just, I was thinking that's kind of like a technological update of that. But, at this point with smartphones, smartphones have been around not for very long, maybe 10 or 15 years. And so I do feel, that we've already sort of heard all of the critiques about smartphones. It's sort of, that trope has sort of been done to death already. It's negative, it's transformative in a bad way towards society and all of that. That being said, it still was interesting hearing Stephen King's take on it, because he had some interesting things to say. He had to talk about smartphones at some point, it was like, it's too meaty a topic for him to ignore forever. But the funny thing is that, it's such an old-fashioned Stephen King story. Like, he was able to tell this tale about the dangers of smartphones using his very old time-honored techniques. So maybe he inadvertently proved that they're not as transformative of society as he thought they were, because, you can still tell these exact same types of stories and it still works perfectly. It still works beautifully for like telling a story, just using his old classic Stephen King techniques. Well, Shannon, how many haunted cell phones out of 5 would you give this one?
Oh, I'll give it a 3. I think that a lot of people would like this film, and any Stephen King fans out there would appreciate it for sure. It's just that for me, there were a lot of great points. Like I say, the acting, Donald Sutherland was great, and the filming of like the cinematography, it was a really beautifully shot film, and there were really some great things about it. But I thought it was a bit stretched out and a bit weak, so that's why I give it a 3. And you, Tommy, how many haunted cell phones do you give it?
I'll give it 3.5. It was a pretty good movie, but it's not a classic. But yeah, if you like Stephen King movies, then you'll definitely like this one. You'll at least want to check it out because of the way it's so close to Stephen King on the printed page. So if you're a real Stephen King fan, I think you will enjoy this one. But I guess that's it for now. I can feel some messages coming through on the old cell phone. Hopefully it's not a ghost.
It is around Halloween.
It is around Halloween, so you never know. All right. So I guess that's it for us. We'll see you next time on Random Movie Time.